Thank you so much for Leonardo for inviting me for this workshop. I came here to present a very specific case study, the martyrdom of 1597 in Japan. As you can see, we are regarding here another martyrdom, not the one in 1597. Indeed, Anna presented also that image. It is interesting. I was thinking about the iconographic representation of that martyrdom of 1597. Generally, the representations are quite apologetical of the martyrdom, and in the sense of being apologetical of the Society of Jesus, when the martyrdom was mainly related to Franciscan martyrs, to Franciscan friars. It is very interesting to see that afterwards the Society of Jesus, having only 3 martyrs from 26 related to the Society of Jesus, will glorify that martyrdom as a martyrdom related to the Society of Jesus, mainly to the converted, Japanese converted Palomiti. For that reason, I chose this image because it is much more crude, not as such glorifying, but at the same time sober, although it is a different martyrdom in 1622, like Anna said. The question of the interpretation of the 1597 martyrdom is very interesting because afterwards we usually see that martyrdom as mainly related with the Society of Jesus. Mainly thanks to propaganda by the society, but initially, and that is also what I will present and study, the initial reactions. The martyrdom is seen as a Franciscan martyrdom and is not acknowledged by the Society of Jesus immediately at the beginning. So I will propose to analyze this martyrdom of 26 Christians in Nagasaki on February the 5th, 1597, and mainly we'll analyze the Jesuit reaction to this initial glorification of the Franciscan martyrs. In fact, on that day, February the 5th, 6 Franciscans and 17 Japanese converts that were working with the Franciscans, and 3 Jesuit brothers, Japanese Jesuit brothers, were crucified. This following an order by Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the main ruler of Japan. In this sense, I was very fortunate for being preceded by Anna because she already presented an historical context of Japan. So this event, this crucifixion of 26 Christians, immediately we can say that unleashed a diversity of reactions. Reflecting these reactions, different notions of martyrdom. That is also very interesting. So this paper also proposes to analyze the immediate reactions to this martyrdom already in 1598, after the year of the martyrdom. The initial Franciscan reaction by a Franciscan friar, a Portuguese Franciscan friar, Fray Jerónimo de Jesus. He was Portuguese, but working on the Spanish patronazgo coming from Manila. So he worked on the apologetical vision of that martyrdom, and of course then the immediate reply of the Society of Jesus by the Jesuit visitor Alessandro Vagnano in 1598 in his apologia of the Society of Jesus in Japan and China. The document by Fray Jerónimo de Jesus is a relación de las cosas que han sucedido en las islas de Japón. This is more or less the title, summing up. But before going to the analysis of the martyrdom, before proceeding to these 97 and then afterwards 98 events, I think that it would be advisable to sketch briefly a historical context so that this martyrdom of 97 and the Jesuit and Franciscan reactions can be properly analyzed. The Society of Jesus, as you know, precedes the Franciscans in organizing the Christian missions in Japan, and that from an early stage. This fact that the Jesuits had arrived much first than the Franciscans, we can say that it kind of gives a sense of historical right the Jesuits feel this from an early stage on, an historical right to be there evangelizing in Japan since already the arrival of Francis Xavier, as you know, in 1549. And during all the second half of the 16th century, the Society of Jesus conveys a sense, let us say, of legitimacy for being there, because they arrived first, precisely. They have a prior knowledge of Japan, and they convey this sense of legitimacy to reports, letters sent to Rome. Reports, letters sent to Rome, which express this notion of legitimacy, aimed mainly, of course, to the Holy See, and this in order to assure an exclusive Jesuit presence in Japan. So, from a very early stage, this strategical propaganda that is felt in all these reports to present this legitimacy to Rome and to the Holy See. So it's information that is sent in Rome in these decades, the second half of the 16th century. We can say, summing up, that the ground of the Jesuit argumentation was that experience, the experience that they had in Japan, obviously produced knowledge, and thus the capacity to react to the many challenges posed by the Japanese society. So the conclusion was that the society had the rightful authority and legitimacy to have Japan as an exclusive field of evangelization. This sense that it is conveyed of exclusive legitimacy is crucial, of course, to understand afterwards the Jesuit reaction to the 97 Martyrdom. Since, obviously, the assumption of the existence of Franciscan martyrs would result in a denial of all these arguments built during those last decades, 60s, 70s, 80s, by the Society of Jesus. So, in a summarized way, let us take a look at how this argumentation is built by the Jesuits from their presence, their experience in Japan from the early 50s onwards. Indeed, as I said, the Jesuits established first in Japan in 1549 with Francis Xavier, and we can say, in a very synthetical way, of course, that during the first decades, 50s, 60s, 70s also, we can say that what is the rhythm of evangelization is mainly settled by the Jesuit presence in the island of Kyushu. I think that we can see the map here, the Western Island, precisely there, Kyushu. So it is the presence in Kyushu that in these decades settles the rhythm of the Jesuits in Japan. Of course, the Jesuit presence, as you know, that it is incorporated in a network of Luso-Asian traders that had established along those axes Macau, Kyushu, since the 1550s. And a present and a Jesuit settlement very much determined by the regional contexts and direct vicinity with the daimyo, the local feudal lords. Mainly the daimyo, the lords of Arima, Omura, Pungu, regions of Kyushu. All these three converted to Christianity by the Jesuits during the 60s, 70s also. So we can say that these decades, 50s, 60s, 70s, result mainly in what we consider is a gathering and accumulation of knowledge, mainly linguistic, but without, we can say, without a long-term active strategy of integration and adaptation to Japanese society. We consider the Jesuits usually very much in that comfortable situation of being protected by the Christian daimyo. So this situation changes in the late 70s, from the late 70s onwards, with the arrival, of course, of the famous Jesuit visitor Alessandro Valignano. He arrives to Kyushu in 1579, and basically he conveys the notion that that knowledge that was accumulated during the previous decades was useless, of course, if not applied in favor of a more intense approach to Japanese society. So for the new visitor, the society, undoubtedly, in those 3 decades, 50s, 60s, 70s, was able to settle in the Japanese society of Kyushu, of course, was able to perceive the main traits of Japanese culture, religion, society. Nevertheless, for Boliviano, Christianity was still felt by the Japanese as an awkward system of beliefs, strange to Japanese converts. So the society could even achieve to remain in Japan, according to Boliviano, but that would be meaningless if Christianity was not rooted in Japan, in Japanese society. So the Boliviano approach was very much determined, we know of that for several studies, by his experience not so much in Kyushu, which was a tame environment, but by his experience in the center of Japan, in Miyako, Kyoto, the imperial capital, between March and September of '81, in a mission that was established previously in the 60s, and that encountered with the presence of such missionaries as Luís Frois, Argentino, and Gaspar Villena. So Boliviano in that period learned very much from their behavior of these missionaries, their experience in the center of the empire, their capacity of integration, and from this moment on, this accumulation of knowledge, we can say that took an entirely practical dimension in the capacity, the needed capacity of adapting to Japanese society. So from this moment on, the 80s, Boliviano not only, as we know, redirects evangelization patterns, but also initiates a typology of information aimed at assuring a legitimate exclusivity of the Jesuits in Japan. And precisely stating that the legitimacy in achieving exclusivity in Japan was a consequence of the missionaries' capacities of knowledge, of reading Japanese society, and therefore applying the best solutions. This way of conceiving information is particularly clear, as we know, with the Japanese Christian Embassy organized by Boliviano in '82 and Centro Europe, aimed chirurgically at King Philip and the Holy See. This embassy is in Madrid in '84, Rome '85, and as we know very well, this embassy is composed by 4 young men, all related with Christian Daimon, Omura, Arima, and Bundon. And they were also students of the Jesuit seminar. So this embassy would be the highest expression of the Jesuit capacity, to forge Japanese Christianity. Therefore, obviously, in all this process of organizing information, society, the Society of Jesus, had the authority to propose this exclusivity of Jesuit missions in Japan. We can say that this Boliviano strategy of presenting this legitimate exclusivity achieves its main goal precisely in '85, when Pope Gregory XIII publishes the brief Ex Pastoralis Officio, granting the exclusive of the evangelization in Japan to the Society of Jesus. So after this presentation in this context, I think that we can easily conclude how that glorification of the Franciscan Martyrs of '97 could result in a serious blow to Boliviano's strategy of reinforcing Jesuit authority over Japan. On the other half, of course, the martyrdom resulted for the Franciscan order as a means to guarantee from that moment on their legitimacy to be in Japan. But let's take a look at this Franciscan presence in Japan, a presence between '93 and '97, and how it led to the crucifixions in Nagasaki on February '97. The Franciscans arrived in the context that were established between Hideyoshi and the governor of Manila. So we can say in order to increase a Spanish presence of Manila traders, for example, that could be competitive also with the Portuguese merchants, with the Portuguese presence. Therefore, so in this context, a first Franciscan mission is established in the capital Macau in 93 with 4 Franciscans, including the superior Pedro, which is going to be a lead element in all this martyrdom. In 94, another 3 arrived, including Jerónimo Jesus, that will write the apologetic work of the Franciscan Martyrs. Finally, in 96, the last 2 Franciscans arrived. So during their presence, they have built 3 monasteries in Miyako, Nagasaki, Osaka, 3 hospitals, just to give you some numbers, in Miyako and 1 in Nagasaki. So afterwards, as you know, this Franciscan mission finished abruptly in 97 when Hideyoshi orders the expulsion of the 3 Franciscans that were in Nagasaki, including Jerónimo Jesus, that is why he is not crucified, and orders the crucifixion of the 5 Franciscans that were in Miyako, Pedro Batista, and the one who was in Osaka, jointly with 17 Japanese converts, working with the Franciscans, and by mistake, 3 Jesuit brothers. I will skip a presentation of Franciscans throughout their evangelization in Japan, but we'll talk also summing up about the precise events that then led to this martyrdom. It is widely accepted that the immediate events that triggered the crucifixion were related with the galleon San Felipe. In June 1596, this galleon left Acapulco, destined to Manila, with a cargo valued in $1.5 million pesos in silver. Nevertheless, as we know, a violent storm forced the galleon to come ashore to the Japanese island of Shikoku, as you can see there, the south of Honshu, the island of Shikoku, on October. Of course, that immediately, having into account the richness of the galleon, Hideyoshi gives order to seize the whole cargo and to hire the crew. Then, according to several sources, mainly Portuguese sources, Jesuit sources, it is revealed that during the inquiry to the crew by the Japanese authorities, the pilot of the galleon, stated that it would not be advisable to seize the cargo, since that would be a serious offense to King Philip. So to give a notion of the king's power, he states, the pilot, that the domains of King Philip were worldwide and very much present near Japan, in the New Spain and in Manila. And his presence could even be felt through the Christian missions. And this was a critical information. According to this information, that the power of King Philip would be felt also with the Christian missions, obviously Hideyoshi gives this order to the martyrdom of several Franciscans. Not all, as I said, those who were in Nagasaki are allowed to leave, but it was a kind of a lesson that he wanted to give to these Franciscans that came from the Spanish world, from Manila. So we have come to the event, as I said. I'm not going to get into detail of the gruesome aspects of the martyr before the crucifixion and during the crucifixion, but let us now take a look at the Franciscan interpretation, the immediate Franciscan interpretation of the martyrdom, so that I can understand afterwards the Jesuit reply. As I told, the immediate reaction is written by Frei Jerónimo Jesus in his Relación in 98, already in Manila. So Jerónimo Jesus had the notion that much more was at stake besides the single event of martyrdom. This was an event that, worked properly, could mean a serious blow to the Jesuit exclusivity over Japan. So what Jerónimo Jesus is going to do, he states that the man responsible for the death of the Franciscans was not Hideyoshi, but the Jesuits in Japan. So he states that the man responsible, more precisely the Jesuits, they were the moral authors of the martyrdom, says Jerónimo Jesus, and says this initial Franciscan reaction. They were the moral authors since they have always opposed the Franciscan presence and surely have manipulated Hideyoshi to take a hard stance on the Franciscans. In this context, the anti-Franciscan leading figure was Bishop Pedro Martins, a Jesuit, was a former provincial of India from 87 to 88. When 88 he is appointed as Bishop of Japan, arriving later in 96 when he arrives in Japan. So the fact that he was a Jesuit and as a bishop had the responsibility to enforce the papal brief of 85 made him, can say, the favorite shooting target for Jerónimo de Jesus. And supporting Jerónimo's allegations were the severe warnings sent by Bishop Martins to the superior Pedro Batista, to which Jerónimo de Jesus makes allusion in his relation. Indeed, Pedro Martins has a hard stance on Pedro Batista and Franciscans. For example, Jesucoff says, "From the Portuguese Padua, we do not go to New Spain and Peru to evangelize. Therefore, you should not come here. Besides, why do you come here to convert Japanese souls? Don't you have enough work to do in Manila? Aren't the souls of Manila as important as the Japanese souls? It seems to me that the conversion of souls is not your main goal, but to set foot in Japan." So, Pedro Martins, in his early Franciscan reaction, becomes the anti-Franciscan target, a kind of beast symbolizing the evil, and to reinforce the illegitimacy of Pedro Martins in his critics towards the Franciscans, Jerónimo de Jesus goes to the point of presenting the bishop as precisely an evil, a demoniac figure. This was the way Jerónimo de Jesus wanted to discredit Pedro Martins, saying, for example, "Shortly before the bishop's arrival, we had ill omens. It rained ashes in the main cities of Japan, Miyako, Osaka, and Sakai, and as a sign of the evil that the bishop and the Society of Jesus would inflict the Franciscan order, there were earthquakes for many days." Choosing a preferential target as symbol of being anti-Franciscan, Pedro Martins, and discrediting him was one of the strategies of Jerónimo de Jesus, as we can see, and also to value the Franciscan martyrdom and presence in Japan. So what is the second argument presented by Jerónimo de Jesus to legitimate this Franciscan martyrdom? It is a positive one. Pedro Martins presents a negative approach. The positive approach is presented with the figure of Pedro Batista, the superior and also the martyr of the Franciscans. So the second argument, the second stance, is to appraise highly Pedro Martins. In opposition, Pedro Batista, in opposition to Pedro Martins, he is the heroic figure, we can say. So this valorization by Jesus of Pedro Batista is crucial to legitimate the Franciscan martyrdom. For example, he goes to write that, for example, of the 12 apostles, only 3 had the highest form of martyrdom. Peter, Andrew, and Philip were crucified, as was our superior, he says. Not even our founding fathers, Francis and Anthony, had the glory of crucifixion. And then he says, as he succeeded with our Lord, who was maligned and offended by the Pharisees, he was also insulted and attacked by the fathers of the society, naming him a poor man, pobreton, it is the expression, and that no honorable man in Japan would consider him. In this valorization of Pedro Batista, Jerónimo de Jesus mentions several miraculous events related with his death, of course. 79 days after the crucifixion, the body of Pedro Martins, still crucified, bleeded. And although there was already a great heat, his body was incorruptible. So this was the Franciscan case, penned immediately by Jerónimo de Jesus. Therefore, after the event, the crucifixion, and this apologetical approach, what would be the Jesuit reaction? A much urgent reply was needed, having in account that already in 97 and 98, several relics of the Franciscan martyrs were circulating in Macau, India, and were sent to Europe as a way of legitimizing the Franciscan presence in Japan. The Jesuit reply will appear immediately in 1598, penned by the Jesuit visitor Alessandro Valignano in his Apologia of the Society of Jesus. We can have the image. of the visitor? Yes, in there, and there, name on the following screen, which we think depicts the torment depicts Valeriano. So if Jerónimo Jesus took the martyrdom as something bigger than the event in itself, as a proof of the quality of the Franciscan evangelization, Valeriano will reply precisely at the same level, saying that much more than the event, the martyrdom was a proof of the Franciscan inadequacy to Japan, and as a result, of closed, egocentric, and a subjective way of regarding reality. Therefore, in his full argumentation, Valeriano will oppose rationality to what he presents as subjectivity and passion by Jerónimo Jesus, even opposing knowledge to superstition, with the aim of showing that the Franciscan martyrdom, as well as Jerónimo Jesus' interpretation, were at the end the final proof of the Franciscan incapacity to read reality. So the capacity of reasoning is the cornerstone of this early Jesuit argumentation. For example, going to facts, Valeriano says that Jerónimo's arguments are subjective, since he does not mention the three Jesuit brothers. He forgets the three Jesuit brothers. Another argumentation is abusive in declaring the Franciscan as martyrs, because he says only the Holy See has authority to do so, so cannot speak previously in martyrs. So that Valeriano in this moment presents the society as well-behaved. He says, we did not recognize the three Jesuit brothers as martyrs. We do not have that authority. So to not recognize the Franciscan martyrdom, it does not recognize the martyrdom of those three Jesuit brothers. So, first conclusion, there is no legitimacy in the cult of the Franciscan brothers, as he writes. Therefore, Valeriano will not interpret Jerónimo's arguments nor the martyrdom as something extraordinary, but as he tries to present, as a natural consequence of their incapacity of reading Japanese reality. He writes, Valeriano, when they came to Japan, they openly built the churches and publicly and indiscreetly preached, not caring about Japanese customs as they should have cared. They were imprudent, not valuating friendly terms with the Japanese lords, and therefore they felt in disgrace, being, in the end, the São Felipe Galleon only a pretext to condemn their behavior. There was supposed to have a pragmatical political reading of Japan. This notion that this is behind this writing of Valeriano, there should be a political reading of society, of Japanese society, in the sense that evangelization was not out of the society. So there should have been a political approach. So he criticizes the Franciscans for having placed too much in Hideyoshi, who has called them, and not worried of making friends and being in good terms with the local lords that were still very important in Japan. He says, they have disdained the dealings with the Japanese lords, with whom we must always be in good terms. For this reason, they did not have friends when Hideyoshi condemned them. Therefore, the martyrdom was not glory for Valeriano, but a result of having lived in denial of the reality. And in Valerian argumentation, this goes to the extent of presenting a rationality in reading, even in reading Japanese nature, trying to prove that the so-called miracles were a subjective and providentialistic projection, but detached from Japanese nature and Japanese reality. So for Valeriano, the knowledge of the diversity and particular mechanics of Japanese nature was crucial to prove the Jesuit attainment to reality, opposed to Jerónimo Jesus' subjective and illusory reading of Japanese reality. In this sense, the miracle, or the concept of miracle, is, for Valeriano, in his argumentation, a subjective interpretation, which lacks an empirical and rational knowledge of reality. And Valeriano writes, the friar mentions columns of fire and lights that were seen during the martyrdom. In reality, during that period of the year, in February and March, peasants used to clear the land by burning herbs. That is why those fires were seen. So this rhythm of Japanese nature. In what concerns earthquakes, says Valmiano, and raining of ashes or floods, this is very usual in Japan, since Japan is composed by islands with volcanoes and fustigated by intense and smoky winds, given the existence of sulphurous waters. He says, he keeps on saying, in Sicily we have a similar situation with the Etna, which powers fire and smoke, and nothing of this seems to be a miracle. Therefore, in order to prove Franciscan displacement of reality, he submits the aforementioned miracles to rationality, and to an empirical knowledge that proves Jesuit attainment to the Japanese reality, and thus Jesuit legitimacy in having exclusivity in working in Japan. So he concludes that the Franciscan martyrdom is a proof of defeat, not glory. Thus he says, there is no need of miracles to prove that those who have suffered for Christ are as well as martyrs, and there have been real martyrs who have never performed a miracle. So this rational approach is very, very interesting. So therefore, Valmiano in this context presents an alternative concept of martyrdom. For him, we can see that the idea of martyr is approached in the framework of a needed and realistic integration in Japanese society, not in confrontation. It is, he conveys this sense that it is on a daily and discrete work that sainthood can be achieved. So he writes, without prejudice of what we consider martyrdom, a man can escape death and still be a saint. And he keeps on writing, and although until now we have not shed blood, the Jesuits, nevertheless our Lord burdens us with many difficulties. Therefore, it is the presence in reality, not denying reality, the presence in reality itself, that provides the real dimension of martyrdom. So the concept of martyrdom is posed on the context of a continuous adaptation, a path, that also helps the missionaries on redemption. So I leave you with this, finally with what he writes, Valmiano, according to this. Adapting to Japanese customs is very painful to us, in such a way that we can say that in doing so, we live in continuous mortification, this alternative concept of martyrdom. Their way of eating, their amusements, their greetings are such that I confess that I have never found so many occasions of mortification as I have found when adapting to all of this. So this is the final remark. Thank you.